You gave $10 million to the butler. My niece screamed as if I'd risen from the grave myself. To the man who polished your shoes. Her words were spit like venom, bouncing off the mahogany coffin that held what was left of me. Of course, I wasn't there to defend myself, at least not in the flesh. My words, however, destroyed the speaker left behind the playing. Tirti son tard. Caution. It began with ask money, an obvious tension. Then asterisk the long and winding road asterisk followed, my way of saying this wouldn't be simple. But it was asterisk a little, respect asterisk by erasure, that made my lawyer smirk as he read the will aloud, because that was the first clue. The playlist wasn't just a farewell, it was a puzzle. Each song title told a piece of my story, and if they followed the right trail, they'd discover who truly deserved the inheritance. 3 weeks earlier, I was still alive barely. My lungs rattled like a dying engine, and every breath tasted like rust. My butler, Arthur, hovered nearby, silent and patient, as always. T'es assez sûr? He asked, as though tea could fix terminal cancer. No, Arthur, I rasped, waving a skeletal hand. Bring me the iPad. He did so without question, though I saw the hesitation in his eyes. He knew what I was doing. I'd been working on that playlist for months, selecting every song like a scalpel cutting through memory. You really intend to make them? Guess, he asked, finally breaking his usual calm. It's cruel, sir. Family. I laughed, though it sounded more like a cough. Leeches with better table manners. Every one of them's been waiting for me to die. Arthur pressed his lips together, the way he always did when he disapproved, but wouldn't say so. And you think making them chase riddles through Spotify is justice? Not justice, I whispered. Truth. The truth was Arthur had been more of a son to me than any of my own blood. When my wife died 10 years ago, he was the one who found me collapsed on the marble floor, drunk and ready to let go. He sat beside me the entire night, silent, steady. Never asked for more than his salary. Never complained when I lashed out or forgot his birthday for the 8th time. He'd seen me at my ugliest and somehow stayed. Enough to consume what it needed to Elise's truth, Marat's truth, their wars, their secrets, their ghosts gone. Arthur watched until nothing was left but the faint smell of scorched metal. Then he stood, the lighter, still warm, in his hand, and turned towards the city. Later that afternoon, in a small cafe overlooking the Praça do Comércio, a television played the news in Portuguese. The anchor spoke of a mysterious data breach, untraceable, offshore accounts, and an anonymous whistleblower who had sent thousands of documents to the international press coalition. Arthur stirred his tea, eyes calm. He had copied everything before the drives burned. He'd sent it all, not to Elise, not to Mara, but to everyone. Every journalist, every embassy, every human rights network. No more secrets, no. More gatekeepers. The world would decide what to do with it now. He finished his tea and left a few coins on the table. As he stepped into the sunlight, the clouds finally began to break, revealing streaks of soft gold across the sky. He walked to the riverside, where the tide lapped quietly against the stones. The city moved. Around him, children, laughing, trams rattling, the living unconcerned with the sins of the dead. He reached into his coat one last time and pulled out a pair of wireless earbuds. Pressing play on his phone, he smiled faintly as the old man's final playlist began to play again. The long and winding road, respect, let it be, and finally the winner takes it all. Arthur listened until the song faded, the river swallowing its last note. Then he removed the earbuds, pocketed them, and walked toward the bridge, disappearing into the golden light of a city that no longer needed him. He didn't leave behind a fortune or a scandal or a war, just silence and the faint echo of a promise finally kept, because in the bloody Giverny Bach lingered near the doorway, silent. Song after song played. Asterisk money, asterisk, respect, asterisk, the long and winding road, asterisk, take care, viva la vida, let it be. Each title, a breadcrumb. Viva la vida, Clara said, frowning. He hated Coldplay. Maybe it's irony, Jason muttered. Arthur's voice, quiet but certain, broke through. He used to play that when your mother was alive. They turned to him like a pack of wolves scenting prey. And how would you know that? Benjamin asked. I was here, Arthur said simply. Every night. Clara crossed her arms. So you think you know the message? He shook his head. I think I know the man. Benjamin smirked. Well, the man thought a playlist could write a will, so I'm not. Sure, that's a compliment, but I'd anticipated their mockery. The playlist's final, track number 30 was asterisk the winner takes it all. Asterisk by then. They'd torn through every clue, every lyric, every line of metadata. But none of them saw what I'd hidden in plain sight. Not the songs themselves, but the order of them. Each first letter formed a message. Aha, pinch hario li gianik hengitres. Sunkiem oa a Harris, tirus the butler that gets everything. It would take them days to realize it, weeks to accept it. But when they finally reached that last track and saw the pattern spelled out in front of them, I imagine the silence was deafening. And Arthur standing alone, in the corner, tears welling up as asterisk the winner takes it all asterisk played probably whispered. What I once told him on that dying night, it doesn't seem right, but he'd know, deep down, that it was. Clara was the first to scream. The moment Benjamin's trembling finger traced the final G in asterisk everything asterisk, she lunged for the phone, eyes wild, voice raw. No, that's not it, can't be right. She jabbed at the screen as though sheer rage could rearrange the letters. But the truth glared back at her in neat capitals, cruel and undeniable. Benjamin snatched the phone from her hand, scrolling through the playlist like a man searching for oxygen. There's got to be something else, he muttered. Maybe there's a second layer, a cipher. Dad loved puzzles. Jason laughed a sharp, nervous sound. Yeah, but he loved irony more. En premier tank. He just made us the punchline. Arthur stood near the back of the room, unmoving. His face was unreadable, but his knuckles were white where they gripped the edge of a leather chair. Every eye turned toward him, suspicion thickening the air like smoke. Did you know about this? Benjamin asked, voice low and dangerous. Arthur hesitated, then shook his head. No, sir. Premier did not. Clara scoffed. Don't sir him. You've been playing this game for years, haven't you? Worming your way into everything. You were always there. Always listening. I was doing my job. Your job, she spat, was to fetch slippers, not inherit empires. The room fractured into chaos. The lawyer, Mr. Faber, tried to intervene, raising his voice over the shouts. Please. Antilla? Court confirms the validity of the will. The estate remains. Shut up. Benjamin barked. He pointed at Arthur. You think we're going to sit back while he walks away with $10 million? Arthur looked from one face to another, every sneer. Every glare the same family he'd served for 25 years, cooked for, driven to airports, tucked into limousines after. Too many drinks. He straightened his spine, his voice calm but trembling at the edges. Your father knew what he was doing. Bullshit. Clara shouted. You manipulated him. Arthur's eyes darkened. Do you think a man like him could be manipulated? That silenced them for a moment. Because they all knew it was true. The old man had been stubborn to the grave. But silence didn't last long. Benjamin stalked closer, his height casting a shadow across Arthur's face. If you think for 1 second I'm letting a servant steal what belongs to us, you're out of your mind. Enough, Mr. Faber snapped, slamming his briefcase shut. The will is explicit. Unless proven fraudulent, the inheritance belongs to Mr. Arthur Givens. If you wish to challenge it, do. So legally, Jason muttered something under his breath, too low to catch. Clara was crying now loud, furious sobs that sounded less like grief and more like humiliation. Arthur didn't move as they stormed past him one by one, the scent of cologne and resentment trailing behind. When the door finally slammed, only he and Mr. Faber remained. Faber exhaled. You should leave town for a few days. They'll cool off. Or at least, they'll try to. Arthur nodded faintly. He always said they'd turn on each other. He was right about that, Faber said, gathering his papers. But he was also right about you. I've seen enough wills to know sincerity when I see it. You were his real family. Arthur didn't reply. His gaze drifted toward the old gramophone in the corner, polished brass, perfectly maintained. He remembered the night the old man played asterisk, let it be asterisk, for the first time. You know, his employer had said, eyes half closed, Paul McCartney wrote this after his mother died. He said it came to him in a dream. She told him to let it be. That's the only advice that ever mattered. Arthur whispered the words now, under his breath. Let it be, but the world didn't let. Things be not when money was involved. 2 nights later, someone broke into the manor. The security phoned nothing, the shadow à telle figure moving with purpose, cutting the power before slipping through the French doors. Arthur wasn't there. He'd taken Faber's advice and rented a modest room above a pub near the Thames. But the neighbours saw lights flicker in the house around. Midnight, then smoke. By the time the fire trucks arrived, the main study, the one where the playlist had first been played, was ash. When Arthur returned the next morning, escorted by the police, he stood silently in front of the charred ruins. The scent of burnt oak and melted wax clung to the air. Arson, the detective said grimly. Deliberate. We'll find who did it. Arthur shook his head. No? You won't. He knew who it was. Not which one, but it didn't matter. They were all capable. Later that day, in the lawyer's office, Faber handed him an envelope. Your transfer went through. The full 10 million, as per your employer's instructions. Arthur didn't look at it. He only said, he made me promise not to change my life. Faber raised a brow. And will you keep that promise? Arthur smiled faintly. I think so, but maybe. I'll change someone else's. That night, in the quiet of his small, rented room, he sat with the iPad that had started it all. The playlist was still there, untouched, glowing faintly on the screen. But now a new track had been added, one he hadn't seen before. Track 31. Asterisk, you'll know what to do. Asterisk. Arthur stared at it for a long moment, heart thudding. Then he pressed play. A voice, soft, weak, but unmistakable, filled the room. If you're here hearing the old friend, eat mon TV burned. Burn. There's a folder in the safe behind the portrait of Eleanor. Use it. You'll know how. I never told you everything about where the money came from, did I? Zay. Recording crackled, the voice dissolving into static. Arthur froze. The portrait of Eleanor, the wife. The safe. He thought of the fire, the ashes, the lost sound of what might still be hidden beneath. For the first time since the funeral, Arthur felt something stirring inside him that wasn't grief or guilt. It was curiosity. And perhaps, beneath that something darker, the morning after the discovery of Asterisk, Arthur couldn't shake the mind. The old man's rasp lingered, like smoke in his thoughts. You'll know what to do. Those words weren't sentimental. They were a command. A final instruction from a man who never did anything without purpose. Arthur lay in the narrow bed of the pub room, staring at the ceiling, fans spinning lazily overhead. For a moment, he won. Then he realized of course it had. The old man would never have trusted mere steel and combination locks. He'd built secrets into the foundation of his life. And Arthur had watched him do it. He rose, dressed carefully, and made his way to the ruins of the manor. The grounds were cordoned off, yellow tape fluttering in the wind. Austadt once stood like a testament to wealth and vanity, now sagged under the weight of blackened beams and cracked marble. The portrait of Eleanor, he knew, had hung in the west parlour, a room that might have survived the flames. Mr. Givens. The detective from before approached, her voice carrying over the crunch of debris. You really shouldn't be here. Where est-il? Collecting evidence. I understand, Arthur said, his tone polite but firm. I worked for him. I know where things were. If there's anything valuable left, I might help you identify it. The detective frowned but relented. 5 minutes. Don't touch anything. Arthur nodded, stepping over the threshold into what used to be the parlour. The air smelled of soot and old secrets. The portrait of Eleanor was still there, though the canvas had bubbled from the heat. Her painted eyes, bottes de calm, luminous, watched him as they always had. He reached behind it, fingers brushing against something cool and metallic. The wall was scorched, but the safe door remained intact. The keypad blinked faintly, as if still alive. Arthur hesitated. He didn't know the code, but he knew the man. He tried the most obvious combination. Her birthday, nothing. Then their wedding anniversary, still nothing. Finally, he exhaled, muttering under his breath, "You old devil." He typed in the date of her death. The light turned green. Inside, the safe wasn't filled with jewels or bonds or cash. Instead, there was a single hard drive, wrapped in fireproof casing, and a small, leather-bound notebook. Arthur slipped them into his coat just as the detective's voice echoed from the hall. "Mr. Givens, time's up." He nodded and stepped back out into the cold morning, the safe door closing quietly behind him. That night, in the dim light of the pub room, he opened the notebook first. The handwriting was unmistakable. The same looping scrawl that had signed countless checks and birthday cards. The first page contained only a line. Arthur, if you're reading this, it means they finally got what they wanted. Accept the truth. Arthur turned the page. The entries that followed were dated over the last 15 years. Written in terse, businesslike language that read more like confessions than journals. The old man described offshore accounts, shell corporations, and coded transactions that had moved millions through anonymous donors. But beneath the numbers was something stranger, a name that appeared again and again, EC Holdings. Arthur frowned. He'd heard that name before, briefly, in whispered calls between his employer and a man from Geneva. It's not about the money, the old man had said once. Pacing the study. It's about keeping it where it belongs. He hadn't understood then. But now, flipping through the notebook, he saw what keeping it where it belongs really meant. The old man had been laundering money. Not doidied but when he found the blood. If anything happens to me, EC Holdings will contact you. They know what the money's for. Don't let the family near it. They'll destroy everything we built. Arthur looked at the hard drive sitting on the desk, its metallic surface reflecting the low amber light. Our glow of the pub lamp. He plugged it into his laptop and waited. A password prompt appeared, asking for a code. He tried the same date, Eleanor's death. It opened. A series of encrypted folders filled the screen, labeled with cryptic phrases, Adoze. Asterisk found as asterisk, asterisk ledger copy asterisk, asterisk Lisbon, file asterisk. But one folder stood out, marked in plain English, asterisk the promise, asterisk he clicked it. Inside was a single video file. He pressed play. The old man appeared on screen, sitting in his study, pale but composed. If you've come this far, Arthur, he said, then you know the family will never understand what this money was meant for. He leaned forward, eyes sharp. It's not a fortune, it's restitution, everything rotten. You remember when I told you I started my career in shipping? That was a lie. I was in weapons logistics. I built my empire on blood money. And I spent the last 20 years trying to clean it. Arthur's throat tightened. The man continued, voice brittle with age, but conviction unbroken. EC Holdings isn't a company. It's a trust. Eleanor's cause, the foundation she dreamed of, to rebuild what men like me destroyed. Hospitals, schools, refuge programs. I funneled everything through the shadows so it couldn't be stolen, or taxed or strangled by the board. He paused, coughing, wincing. I left you the inheritance because they never let it stand if I gave it directly to charity. They declo. It back, file injunctions, claim I was senile. But they won't fight you. Arthur, not forever. You're invisible to them. That's your power. Arthur leaned closer to the screen. The man smiled faintly, a ghost of the authority he once commanded. When the dust settles, you'll find a contact at EC Holdings. A woman named Elise Carter. She knows what to do next. Tell her you're ready to finish what Eleanor started. The screen went black. Arthur sat motionless, listening to the faint hum of the laptop fan. He served the man for decades, and only now did he understand what kind of man he truly was. Not just a miser or a manipulator, but a sinner clawing his way toward redemption. He opened the notebook again, flipping to the final page. There was one last line, written shakily, but with absolute intent. Greater than this is the real inheritance. Do with it what I never could. Make it clean. Arthur closed the book, hands trembling. The money wasn't his to spend. It was his to deliver. But before he could decide what to do next, his phone buzzed. A blocked number. He hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice, calm, professional, spoke on the other end. Mr. Givens. My name is Elise Carter. I believe we have some unfinished business. Arthur froze, the phone pressed to his ear, his breath shallow. The voice was poised, deliberate like someone who had rehearsed this moment long before dialing. Elise Carter, he repeated quietly. You work with EC Holdings? That's right, she said. Her tone carried no warmth, only certainty. And you, Mr. Givens, have something that belongs to us. He glanced toward the hard drive, still glowing faintly on the desk. I suppose I do. Good, then let's talk about what happens next. She paused. And in that silence Arthur heard something unnerving, calculated patience. The kind of silence people use when they're not asking but commanding. I'll come to you, she said. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. The Kingfisher Hotel, Conference Suite 3. Bring the drive. Alone. Before Arthur could answer, the line went dead. He stared at the screen for a long time, then slowly placed the phone down. The old man-s voice echoed in his head. Asterisk, tell her you're ready to finish what Eleanor started. Asterisk, but something in Elise Carter's tone told him this wasn't a simple handoff. He didn't sleep that night. He sat by the window of the small pub room, watching rain streak the glass as London hummed quietly below. He thought of his employer, of Eleanor's portrait, of the family who'd once filled that manor with laughter and venom. He thought of $10 million that now felt less like fortune and more like penance. And when the dawn finally bled through the curtains, Arthur was still awake, still thinking about what it meant to make something clean. The Kingfisher Hotel was the kind of place that looked expensive without needing to say so. Glass and steel curved elegantly above polished stone floors. Arthur felt out of place in his old grey coat, but no one stopped him as he stepped inside. Conference Suite 3 was tucked at the end of a quiet hallway. The door was already ajar. Inside, a woman stood by the window. She was in her 40s, sharp-suited, hair pulled back in a braid that glinted silver under the morning light. A small scar cut through her left eyebrow, lending her an expression of perpetual skepticism. Mr. Givens, she said without turning. You're punctual. I like that. You must be Elise Carter. I must. She faced him then, assessing him with a precision that made him feel dissected. You brought the drive? Arthur reached into his coat and produced it carefully. It's all here. Good. She gestured to the table. May I? He nodded, placing the drive in front of her. She plugged it into a sleek laptop, the same symbol you see, flashing briefly on the screen before a series of encrypted folders appeared. She typed rapidly, unlocking each one with practiced ease. Your employer was meticulous, she murmured. He kept everything exactly as we instructed. Arthur's brow furrowed. Oui, she smiled faintly. You didn't think EC Holdings was one man's idea, did you? It's bigger than that. Your late employer was just one of several. Benefactors. People who realized they'd built fortunes on sins they couldn't undo. So it's a charity. In spirit, she said, closing the laptop, in execution something more complex. We fund projects that governments won't touch, hospitals in war zones, schools where there are no roads. We move through the shadows because the light burns bureaucracy to ash. Arthur studied her, searching for deceit, and the money he left me. She folded her hands. That was seed money, a transfer node. The will was a distraction, something loud and emotional, to hide the real movement. You weren't meant to keep it, Mr. Givens. You were meant to deliver it. He nodded slowly. I suspected as much. Her eyes softened slightly. You were loyal to him for many years. That loyalty is rare. Which is why I'm asking you to continue his work. Arthur blinked. Continue it. Eliminate intermediaries. Channel the funds to our operations under your name. No one will question you. The family is too busy devouring itself. He hesitated. You want me to launder the money again? No, she said, standing. I want you to redeem it. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were coordinates, names, and transfer schedules. Every project listed here needs immediate funding. Orphanage reconstruction in Aleppo. A water network outside Nairobi. A trauma clinic in Odessa. Arthur flipped through the pages. Each entry was stamped confidential ACH network. It was overwhelming to organize to be fantasy, too noble to be clean. He looked up. Why me? Because, she said simply, you're invisible. And invisibility is a gift most men waste. He thought about that. The years he'd spent unnoticed, walking quietly through halls of power. Holding the secrets of the rich like a servant holds a tray, never spilling, never speaking. Clean. He closed the folder and met her gaze. All right. I'll do it. Good, Elise said, her voice calm, almost approving. But understand something. Mr. Givens, this isn't charity. It's restitution. And restitution has enemies. What kind of enemies? The kind that killed your employer, she said. Arthur froze. Killed. Elise's expression didn't change. You think he died peacefully? No, he was silenced. He'd started cutting ties, turning legitimate contracts into ghost accounts. Someone noticed. He felt the room tilt slightly, his pulse hammering in his ears. Who? She closed the laptop, her movements precise, deliberate. That's what you'll help us find out. By the time Arthur stepped out of the Kingfisher Hotel, the city felt different, colder, more alive. He wasn't just a butler anymore. He was the executor of a ghost's final command, a man standing between redemption and ruin. And though the old man was gone, his words whispered through the wind as if carried on the hum of the world itself. ULL know what to do. Arthur did. He was going to finish what Eleanor started. But first, he'd have to find out who killed her husband and why they were still watching him. That night, Arthur didn't go home. Equid not. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the old man's face flickering on that video, eyes filled with regret, voice trembling with the weight of a secret too heavy to die with him. Weapons, logistics, restitution. They'll destroy everything we built. The words carved themselves into Arthur's chest, looping endlessly. He walked aimlessly through the rain-slick streets, coat pulled tight, the city lights reflecting off puddles like broken mirrors. When he finally ducked into a small cafe near South Bank, it was nearly midnight. He sat in the corner, the hard drive in his pocket, Elise Carter's folder beneath his arm. He ordered tea, mostly out of habit, and stared out the fogged window. Someone had killed his employer. That realization had cracked something in him, something old and carefully buried under years of discipline. He'd been trained to obey, not question, to serve, not investigate. But now, obedience felt like betrayal. He pulled out the notebook again. The last few entries were short, as though written in a hurry. EC meeting's getting tense. Not everyone agrees with Eleanor's plan. Received a call from Geneva. Mention of the broker. Arthur must never know about the Lisbon account. Arthur frowned. The Lisbon account! He flipped back through the folder. Elise had given him pages of coded references and encrypted roots, but that name wasn't there. It had been scrubbed out deliberately. He didn't know why, but instinct told him Elise Carter wasn't telling him everything. He took out his phone and searched the name EC Holdings again. Nothing on public record. No offices. No board members. It was as if the organization didn't exist outside whispers. But when he typed Lisbon account, one strange hit appeared on a deep, financial, foreman, anonymous thread. Last updated 2 weeks ago, Lisbon account transferring assets under proxy, signatures. Unknown beneficiary, initials. Edgy Arthur's stomach turned. Edgy his initials. He leaned back in his chair, heart pounding. Employer was meticulous, she murmured. He kept everything exactly as we instructed. Arthur's brow furrowed. We? She smiled faintly. You didn't think EC Holdings was one man's idea, did you? It's bigger than that. Your late employer was just one of several benefactors. People who realized they'd built fortunes on sins they couldn't undo. So it's a charity. In spirit, she said, closing the laptop. In execution, something more complex. We fund projects that governments won't touch, hospitals in war zones, schools where there are no roads. We move through the shadows because the light burns bureaucracy to ash. Arthur studied her, searching for deceit and the money he left me. She folded her hands. That was seed money, a transfer node. The will was a distraction, something loud and emotional to hide the real movement. You weren't meant to keep it, Mr. Givens. You were meant to deliver it. He nodded slowly. I suspected as much. Her eyes softened. Slightly. You were loyal to him for many years. That loyalty is rare. Which is why I'm asking you to continue his work. Arthur blinked. Continue it. Eliminate intermediaries. Channel the funds to our operations under your name. No one will question you. The family is too busy devouring itself. He hesitated. You want me to launder the money again? No, she said. Standing. I want you to redeem it. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were coordinates, names, and transfer schedules. Every project listed here needs immediate funding. Orphanage reconstruction in Aleppo. A water network outside Nairobi. A trauma clinic in Odessa. Arthur flipped through the pages. Each entry was stamped confidential. ECH. Network. It was overwhelming to organize to be fantasy, to noble to be clean. He looked up. Why me? Because, she said simply, you're invisible. And invisibility is a gift most men waste. He thought about that. The years he'd spent unnoticed, walking quietly through halls of power. Holding the secrets of the rich like a servant holds a tray, never spilling, never speaking. Maybe. This was what the old man meant. Make it clean. He closed the folder and met her gaze. All right. I'll do it. Good, Elise said, her voice calm, almost approving. But understand something. Mr. Givens, this isn't charity. It's restitution. And restitution has enemies. What kind of enemies? The kind that killed your employer, she said. Arthur froze. Killed? Elise's expression didn't change. You think he died peacefully? No, he was silenced. He'd started cutting ties, turning legitimate contracts into ghost accounts. Someone noticed. He felt the room tilt slightly, his pulse hammering in his ears. Who? She closed the laptop, her movements precise, deliberate. That's what you'll help us find out by the time Arthur stepped out of the Kingfisher Hotel. The city felt different, colder, more alive. He wasn't just a butler anymore. He was the executor of a ghost's final command, a man standing between redemption and ruin. And though the old man was gone, his words whispered through the wind as if carried on the hum of the world itself. You'll know what to do. Arthur did. He was going to finish what Eleanor started. But first, he'd have to find out who killed her husband and why they were still watching him. That night, Arthur didn't go home. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the old man's face flickering on that video, eyes filled with regret, voice trembling with the weight of a secret, too heavy to die with him. Weapons, logistics, restitution. They'll destroy everything we built. The words carved themselves into Arthur's chest, looping endlessly. He walked aimlessly through the rain-slick streets, coat pulled tight, the city lights reflecting off puddles like broken mirrors. When he finally ducked into a small cafe near South Bank, it was nearly midnight. He sat in the corner, the hard drive in his pocket, Elise Carter's folder beneath his arm. Et ordre raide. Tea, mostly out of habit, and stared out the fogged window. Someone had killed his employer. That realization had cracked something, in him something old, and carefully buried under years of discipline. He'd been trained to obey, not question. To serve, not investigate. But now, obedience felt like betrayal. He pulled out the notebook again. The last few entries were short, as though written. In a hurry. EC meetings getting tense. Noé Verillon. Agrees with Eleanor's plan. Received a call from Geneva, mention of the broker. Arthur. Must never know about the Lisbon account. Arthur frowned. The Lisbon account. He flipped back through the folder. Elise had given him pages of coded references, an encrypted root spot. That name wasn't there. It had been scrubbed out, deliberately. He didn't know why. But instinct told him Elise Carter wasn't telling him everything. He took out his phone and searched the name EC Holdings again. Nothing on public record. No offices. No board members. It was as if the organization didn't exist outside whispers. But when he typed Lisbon account, one strange hit appeared on a deep financial foreman, anonymous thread, last updated 2 weeks ago. Lisbon account transferring assets under proxy signatures. Unknown beneficiary. Initials. AG. Arthur's stomach turned. AG his initials. He leaned back in his chair, heart pounding. The old man hadn't he just named him executor, he'd made Arthur the asterisk key asterisk to something hidden. Something bigger than $10 million or burnt down estates. The cafe door opened with a soft chime. Arthur glanced up and froze. Two men in dark suits entered, scanning the room in quiet synchronization. They weren't here for coffee. Their eyes moved like searchlights, calculating, precise. Arthur slid the notebook shut and tucked it into his coat. He kept his head down as they spoke briefly with the barista. Then one of them turned toward the back tables. Their gaze brushed him, recognition flared. Arthur stood, slow and controlled, as if stretching his legs, but his pulse was thrumming. The men began moving toward him, splitting to cover both exits. He moved first. Out the Zuidwater, down the Nareen, that street. He didn't run running drew attention, but his stride was quick, measured. Behind him, footsteps echoed. He turned the corner, sharply, ducking under an overhang beside a row of trash bins. The footsteps paused, then split. One passed by his hiding spot, the other circled back toward the street. Arthur waited until they were gone before slipping out into the main road. He hailed the first cab he saw. "Where to?" The driver asked. Arthur hesitated. "Kingfisher Hotel," he said finally. "And please take the long way." When he arrived, Elise Carter was still there. She was standing by the window, smoking a luxury hotels hadn't allowed in years, but no one dared stop her. Arthur didn't knock. He walked in, soaked to the bone. "Two men," he said. "They followed me. They knew where I was." Elise turned slowly, exhaling smoke. "You're sure they were following you?" "They weren't there for tea." Her expression didn't change, but a flicker of irritation crossed her eyes. "You shouldn't have come here. If they traced you, they've traced this meeting. You said you wanted me to help find who killed him. Well, they might have just found me instead." She crushed the cigarette against the window frame. "Then we'll have to move quickly." Arthur's jaw tightened. "You didn't tell me everything." She raised a brow. "Excuse me, the Lisbon account. It was mentioned in his notes, but nowhere in your files." "Why?" Elise's silence stretched for a beat too long. Then she sighed. "Because the Lisbon account was compromised. It was the trigger that got him killed. What was in it?" "Proof," she said simply. "Records of every illegal shipment, every payment, every political name attached. He kept it, encrypted under his personal code. We thought it was destroyed in the Geneva breach 2 months ago. But if it's still out there, if someone found out he'd hidden it, they'd silence him." Arthur finished. Elise nodded. "And now they'll silence anyone who knows." Arthur sank into the chair opposite her. "And what do you want me to do?" "I want you to boot T-Steam with Perpenda small case, revealing a new phone, a fake ID, and a passport under the name asterisk, Thomas Green asterisk. You'll leave London tonight, Lisbon first. There's someone waiting for you there I'll contact. She goes by Mara." Arthur stared at the passport. "You're sending me into the storm." She met his gaze. "No, Mr. Givens, I'm sending you to the eye of it. At dawn, Arthur boarded a private flight under his new name. The city below faded into mist as the plane lifted through the clouds. He pulled the hard drive from his pocket, turning it over in his hands. Lisbon, the final secret of a dying man." Outside, the sun broke across the horizon, gold light spilling over the Atlantic. He thought of the playlist that had started it all. Asterisk, the winner takes it all. Asterisk, maybe this time the winner wouldn't be the one holding the fortune. Maybe it would be the one who made it right. Arthur closed his eyes and whispered the name that still haunted him. Eleanor. And then, quietly, he promised the air itself. "I'll finish it." Lisbon shimmered under the morning sun, a city of steep hills and secrets. Arthur stepped out of the taxi and looked up at the ochre facade of a decaying hotel. Residência Malha da Chimenchon. The air smelled of sea salt and diesel. Somewhere nearby, a tram bell clanged like an old memory. He checked the passport in his pocket asterisk, Thomas Green asterisk, then climbed the cracked marble steps. The woman at the front desk barely looked up as he signed the register. "Room 14, she said, sliding him a brass key that had seen better decades. Inside, the room was sparse, single bed, flickering ceiling fan, and a window that opened onto the tiled rooftops of Alfama. But someone had been there before him. On the bed lay an envelope with his alias written neatly across it. Etoritopen. Inside was a note, handwritten in looping script, greater than asterisk asterisk, welcome to Lisbon. Come to the Miraduro da Senhora do Monte at sunset. Sit on the east bench. Bring nothing but your courage. M. Asterisk asterisk Arthur sat down heavily, the note trembling in his hand. Asterisk Mora. Asterisk Elise's mysterious contact. Whoever she was, she'd known his name before he arrived and pulled out a small flash drive. "This," she said, placing it in his hand, "is what's left of the Lisbon account. The part your employer never shared with Elise." Arthur hesitated. "How did you?" "Because I was his contact before." She was. He stared at her. "You worked for him." "Not for him," she said, voice softening. "With him, Eleanor, and I started the cause." Together, long before EC Holdings existed. He twisted it into something else, something secret, something powerful. But Eleanor's original vision still lives in that data you're carrying. That's why they killed him. The sun dipped below the horizon, the city bleeding into shadow. Mara stood. There's a café on Rua dos Douradores. The owner owes me a favor. Meet me there tomorrow, morning at 7. We'll go over what's left. She started to leave, but Arthur caught her sleeve. Mara, if you're telling the truth, what happens now? She looked at him, her expression unreadable. Now, Mr. Givens, you decide who you're really serving, the living or the dead. Arthur didn't return to the hotel immediately. He walked the twisting streets until the lamps flickered on and the music from the fado bars spilled into the night. Her words followed him with every step. Asterisk launders guilt, not money. Asterisk, asterisk, who are you really serving? Asterisk, by the time he reached the hotel, his mind was burning with questions. He set both drives, the hard one from the manor, the flash one from Moraine. The desk beside his laptop. 2 keys, 2 versions of the same story. He plugged them in. The screen filled with encrypted directories, identical at first glance, but when he opened them, differences began to appear. Files that existed in one didn't in the other. One folder, buried deep in the structure, caught his attention. Asterisk EC underscore, network underscore executives asterisk. Inside was a list of names, board members, donors, financiers. He scrolled slowly. Politicians, CEOs, judges, a few he recognized from newspaper headlines. And then, at the bottom of the list, his heart stopped. Asterisk, asterisk, Elise Carter, asterisk, asterisk, the metadata showed years of payments from offshore accounts. Transfers to private contractors, security firms, surveillance. With him, but Eleanor's cause deserves better. The world deserves better. Arthur stared at her for a long moment. Then, he nodded once. Tonight, then, by dusk, the wind had shifted. Clouds rolled over the river, bruised and heavy. Mara drove an old Citroën through the industrial outskirts of Lisbon, headlights cutting through mist and rain. Arthur sat beside her, watching the city fall away into shadow. The facility appeared at the end of a narrow, Rodin-unmarked concrete structure surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. A guard booth stood at the gate, its occupant half asleep behind glass. Mara parked 100 meters away and killed the engine. Security rotates every 2 hours, she whispered. We have 15 minutes to get in, 8 to get out. Arthur slipped on a pair of gloves. And if we're caught? We won't be, she said. You're with me. They moved through the rain, like ghosts, slipping past the fence through a gap she'd already cut. The building's side door yielded to a code she tapped into. A keypad, digits burned into her memory. Inside, the air was cold, sterile, humming faintly with the sound of servers. Rows upon rows of steel cabinets stretched into the dimness, labeled only by alphanumeric codes. Arthur followed her to the far wall, where a single terminal blinked patiently. This is it, she said, inserting a portable drive. Once this uploads, we'll have a complete copy of their archive. Arthur stood watch, scanning the aisles, his senses sharp. It reminded him of pacing the manor, at night listening, for intruders, for strange noises, for the ghosts of the past. 3 minutes, Mara said. But then the sound of tires on gravel outside. Arthur's head snapped toward the door. Headlights flared through the frosted glass. Someone's here, he hissed. Mara's hands flew over the keyboard. I need 1 more minute. Arthur moved to the window. Two black SUVs rolled up the drive, doors opening in unison. Men stepped out, dressed in dark tactical gear, moving with military precision. Elise, he whispered. Mara yanked the drive from the terminal. Time's up. They bolted for the rear exit, the faint whine of a drone echoing above. Floodlights snapped on, slicing through the rain. Stop. Security, a voice barked through a loudspeaker. They didn't stop. Mara led the way through the maze of crates and equipment, darting between shadows. A spotlight swept over the corridor, catching Arthur's shoulder. Bullets sparked against the steel wall beside him. He ducked, heart hammering. Mara shoved open a service door, pulling him through into the night. The rain had turned violent, slashing sideways as they ran toward the tree line. Behind them, a figure stepped out of the SUV, Elise Carter. Her voice cut through the storm, cold and amplified. Arthur, don't do this. You don't understand what you're carrying. Arthur stopped just for a moment long, enough to see her face, illuminated in the white beam of the headlights, calm, commanding, and... Yet something in her eyes looked almost desperate. Mara grabbed his arm. Move. They disappeared into the forest, the sound of shouts and engines growing fainter behind them. When they finally stopped, miles away, the rain had softened to mist. They were both soaked, panting. Arthur turned to her. She called my name. She knows you switched sides, Mara said, catching her breath. And she hunt us for it. He looked down at the drive clenched in her hand. Then we'd better make it worth the chase. She smiled grimly. Oh, it's worth it. What's on here will burn her world down. But as she spoke, Arthur noticed something in her other hand, a small device, blinking faintly red. He frowned. What is that? Mara looked down, startled, and then realization hit both of them at once. It wasn't hers. It was a tracker. Arthur's blood went cold. They're already coming. Mara's eyes widened. Then we split. I'll draw them off. No, Arthur said firmly. We finished together. Stepping back. You're the only one they won't kill on sight. You can still reach the embassy. Go, Arthur. Run. Mara, go. And before he could stop her, she tossed him the drive and sprinted into the fog, vanishing between the trees. Arthur hesitated, every instinct screaming to follow, but then the hum of approaching vehicles sealed his decision. He turned toward the distant lights of the city and began to run. Rain poured down like the world itself was trying to erase his footprints. Behind him, the night erupted with gunfire. And ahead Lisbon glowed, waiting, indifferent, alive. He didn't look back. Not yet. He ran until the rain turned to mist and the mist turned to silence. Arthur collapsed behind a low stone wall overlooking the river. Lungs burning, the taste of salt and metal thick on his tongue. The drive was still clutched in his hand. It's small, lead furring, heartbeat mahawagon. He told himself she'd escaped, that she was too smart, too seasoned to get caught. But the gunfire echoing through the trees had been sharp, final, and close. He pressed his back against the wall and closed his eyes. Asterisk focus, Arthur. Move. Asterisk, he needed a plan. The embassy. She'd said to go to the British embassy. He remembered where it was north of the city, near the Avenida de Libertad. But if Elise's men had a tracker on Mara, they'd have triangulated both of them by now. Going anywhere official would be suicide. He needed cover here and that team. Arthur pushed himself to his feet, gripping the drive tighter. Rain beaded on his face as he stumbled down a cobbled alley, lit by the dying flicker of street lamps. A tram clattered past, full of tourists who would never know the shape of the war, unfolding in the city's shadows. He ducked into a narrow doorway an old chapel long, since abandoned, its iron gate hanging crooked. The scent of mildew and wax lingered faintly in the air. Inside, the pews were broken, the altar stripped bare. But it was quiet. And that, for the moment, was enough. He sat on the cold stone floor and took out his phone. One bar of signal, enough. He opened a secure messaging app, the kind his employer had once used to communicate with distant donors. He typed slowly, deliberately. Greater than asterisk asterisk 2, asterisk asterisk unknown, contact greater than asterisk asterisk subject, asterisk asterisk the drive greater than asterisk asterisk message, asterisk asterisk she killed him. I have proof. Lisbon compromised. Need extraction. 24 hours or less. He hesitated before hitting send. Then the phone vibrated. A new message flashed on screen. Greater than. Asterisk asterisk unknown. Asterisk asterisk Arthur. Stop running. You don't understand. What's on that drive? His breath caught. It was Elise. He stared at the screen as another message appeared, almost instantly. Greater than. Asterisk asterisk unknown. Asterisk asterisk Mara isn't who she says she is. She's not saving you. She's saving herself. Arthur felt the chill spread through him, slow and deliberate. He typed back with shaking fingers. Greater than she is proof. About you. About the Lisbon account. A pause. Then, greater than Arthur, that proof is bait. We created it. To flush her out, his pulse hammered. You're lying, he whispered to the empty chapel. Greater than. Ask yourself why she found you so easily. Why she knew your alias before you arrived. Why she handed you asterisk her asterisk drive Not ours. He stared at the small device in his hand, the one Mara had given him, the one that had supposedly exposed Elise, had she planted it, greater than. She works for a splinter faction, Elise wrote. They want EC Holdings dismantled, not exposed. They want control. That drive isn't evidence, it's a key. It can access accounts we buried decades ago. You deliver it to her, you'll hand her billions. Arthur's chest tightened. She's using you. Arthur, just like he did, but unlike him, she won't hesitate to kill you when she's done. He read the words 3 times, each one heavier than the last. Could it be true? Morat's warning about Elise had been convincing perhaps, and yet everything Elise was saying made a brutal kind of sense. The precision, the planning. The way Mara had vanished into the forest without hesitation, leaving him holding the drive like a decoy. His phone buzzed again. Meet me 1 hour Praca du Comercio. South Steps, no tricks, no agents, just you and me. He didn't reply, not immediately. He stared at the flickering candlelight bleeding through the chapel's broken windows, weighing both sides of a scale that had no balance left. Mara, or Elise, the past or the present, truth or survival. At last he typed 1 hour, then he slipped the drive into his coat and stepped out into the storm. The Praca du Comercio at night was a cathedral of shadows, vast and empty, the yellow arcades lit like sentinels guarding the river. Arthur walked slowly across the slick cobblestones, each step echoing beneath the arches. Elise stood near the statue at the center of the square, her dark coat billowing in the wind. She looked untouched by the rain, as if the weather itself respected her authority. You came, she said. I had questions, Arthur replied. I imagine you do. She gestured to a bench near the balustrade. Walk with me. They moved together, their footsteps steady. You read the files, she said. You know what EC Holdings really is. We don't hide from truth. Arthur, we manage it, contain it. Men like your employer created monsters, and our job is to keep them from breeding more. Arthur's jaw clenched. By killing him, by stopping him from detonating decades of fragile peace. Elise corrected. He was about to leak data that would have exposed every power network we used to keep nations from collapsing. You think chaos brings justice? It doesn't, it brings anarchy. He stopped walking. You murdered a man trying to atone for what he'd done. No, she said quietly. We removed a man trying to burn the house down while children were still inside. The rain fell harder, now wind whipping around them. Elise turned toward him, her eyes sharp but not unkind. I'm offering you the truth, Arthur, not the fantasy he gave you. You can walk away, or you can keep running until someone else decides you've outlived your usefulness. He took a step closer. And if I don't walk away? She looked almost sad. Then I do what I must. Arthur reached into his coat for a moment. She tensed, but instead of a weapon, he pulled out both drives. They're yours, he said, but only if you answer one question. She tilted her head. Which is, who killed Eleanor? That stopped her. Rain streaked down her face, though her eyes didn't move. Elise, he said, his voice low, almost pleading. He built everything because of her. He destroyed himself because of her. I need to know. She exhaled slowly. Eleanor's death wasn't an accident. It was leverage. Someone needed to ensure her husband's obedience. So, yes, she was killed, but not by me. Then who? Her gaze met his, steady, pitiless. By Mara. The words hit like thunder. Arthur froze. You're lying. I wish I were. Elise's voice softened. She infiltrated See, under Eleanor's name. She wasn't her ally. She was her shadow, a broker. She sold secrets to the highest bidder. When Eleanor discovered it, she threatened to expose her. Days later, Eleanor was dead. Arthur's hand tightened around the drives. You expect me to believe that? Check the metadata on the file she gave you. Elise said. You'll see the signature. M. Kovacs, that's her real name. She's been playing everyone. For years he wanted to deny it, to laugh, to walk away. But the ennies crawling under his skin wouldn't let him. Elise stepped closer, lowering her voice. Arthur, listen to me. Give me the drives and I'll give you protection. If you keep them, she finds you. And this time she won't miss. And then somewhere in the distance, a single sharp crack, a bullet struck the stone column beside them, sending shards flying. Elise ducked, instantly drawing a gun. Move. Arthur hit the ground as another shot rang out. Across the square, a silhouette flickered behind the arcades. A figure in a green coat, hair whipping in the wind. Mara. She was aiming right at him. Elise fired. Back glass shattered. Arthur crawled toward cover. The drive still clutched to his chest when he looked up. Again, Mara was gone, and Elise was bleeding. A crimson bloom spread across her shoulder, her gun slipping from her fingers. Arthur, she gasped. Take them, and go. He stared at her, stunned. You'll die. She gave a bitter smile. Not tonight, but if you stay you will. Sirens wailed in the distance. Police, or maybe someone worse. Arthur grabbed the drives, tucked them beneath his coat, and ran into the maze of rain, slick alleys behind him. Elise's voice carried faintly through the storm. Don't trust her. He didn't need the warning, because for the first time he wasn't sure there was anyone left to trust only the truth, and whatever it would cost him to find it. The rain hadn't stopped by morning. It poured over Lisbon like the sky itself was washing away everything that had happened. The blood, the lies, the sins. Arthur sat alone on the stone steps overlooking the Tagus River. His coat soaked, his breath steady. In his hands rested the two drives, Elise's cold and sleek, Marat's smaller, heavier, somehow, as though burdened by all the ghosts it carried. He'd spent the night running, first from Elise's agents, then from Marat's shadows, and finally from the truth itself. But dawn has a way of demanding reckoning, and they're under the soft grey light. Arthur decided to stop running. He placed both drives on the step before him to paths. Two versions of redemption. He pulled out his phone, hands trembling slightly, and opened the files on Marat's drive. He dug through the encrypted data, searching for the metadata Elise had mentioned, and there it was, buried deep beneath falsified timestamps and decoy certificate signature Kovacsam, Marat's real name. He stared at it for a long time, and for the first time since this entire ordeal began, he didn't feel anger, just exhaustion. Elise had been right about one thing: truth was never clean. Everyone in this story had tried to polish it, reshape it, own it. The old man with his playlist, Will; Elise with her controlled corruption; Mara with her righteous fire. Each had believed they were saving the world in their own way, but none of them had ever stopped to ask if the world wanted to be saved. Arthur exhaled the breath, shaking as it left him. He thought of Eleanor, the woman whose kindness had filled the manor long before the greed and guilt. He remembered how she once told him while arranging flowers in the study, goodness, Arthur, isn't about perfection. It's about refusing to look away. He hadn't understood her then. He did now. He took out a lighter from his coat pocket, the same silver one the old man had used for his cigars, and flicked it open. The flame danced weakly in the wind, defiant and trembling. He set it beneath the drives for a moment. Nothing happened. Then the plastic began to melt, black smoke curling into the wet air. The rain hissed against it, but the fire held long enough to consume what it needed to. Elise's truth, Marat's truth, their wars, their secrets, their ghosts gone. Arthur watched until nothing was left but the faint smell of scorched metal. Then he stood, the lighter still warm in his hand, and turned towards the city. Later that afternoon, in a small cafe overlooking the Praça do Comércio, a television played the news in Portuguese. The anchor spoke of a mysterious data breach, untraceable offshore accounts, and an anonymous whistleblower who had sent thousands of documents to the international press coalition. Arthur stirred his tea, eyes calm. He had copied everything before the drives burned. He'd sent it all, not to Elise, not to Mara, but to everyone. Every journalist, every embassy, every human rights network. No more secrets, no more gatekeepers. The world would decide what to do with it now. He finished his tea and left a few coins on the table. As he stepped into the sunlight, the clouds finally began to break, revealing streaks of soft gold across the sky. He walked to the riverside, where the tide lapped quietly against the stones. The city moved around him, children, laughing, trams rattling, the living unconcerned with the sins of the dead. He reached into his coat one last time and pulled out a pair of wireless earbuds. Pressing play on his phone, he smiled faintly as the old man's final playlist began to play again. The long and winding road, respect, let it be, and finally the winner takes it all. Arthur listened until the song faded, the river swallowing its last note. Then he removed the earbuds, pocketed them, and walked toward the bridge, disappearing into the golden light of a city that no longer needed him. He didn't leave behind a fortune or a scandal or a war, just silence and the faint echo of a promise finally kept, because in the bloody Giverny Bach.